Minister, information supplied to me in a response to a parliamentary question to the Minister for Health revealed that from 2010, the total cost to the state of defending medical negligence litigation against the HSE and Department of Health, including court settlements, now exceeds €3 billion. In fact, there has been a 400% increase in costs from 2010 to 2023, rising from 74 million to just over 350 million in 2023, respectively. I'm sure that you will agree with me that these are staggering costs and a very clear indication that something is profoundly broken when a health system for such a small country can generate these kind of costs and settlements. These costs relate to claims against all HSE locations, that is, acute and community settings, Section 38 service providers and the National Services and Disability sector locations. Behind these costs, however, are traumatised patients, devastated families who are left with lifelong care needs, and indeed doctors and medical professionals who have been broken by the adversarial and lengthy nature of the litigation process. We know that doctors are leaving our system because of this. Indeed, as Professor Gabrielle Colleran, the Vice President of the Irish Hospital Consultants Association, pointed out on Monday on RTE in response to my parliamentary question, she pointed out that Ireland, along with the United States, is top of the table internationally in terms of medical negligence litigation. Some of the major reasons for this, as Professor Colleran pointed out, relate to the ongoing failure to optimise care, treatment delays, unfilled medical posts and overcrowding in A&Es, which generates their own kind of adverse outcomes, including death, unfortunately. Minister, in response to queries from journalist John Drennan on this issue, the Private Hospitals Association of Ireland also expressed concerns around Ireland's outlier status when it comes to the cost of medical negligence. The PHA said the human and financial cost of the current clinical negligence claim systems reveals a system that is not fit for purpose and has not been fit for purpose for some time now. So what are the possible solutions? According to Professor Colleran, the first thing we need to do is to be ambitious about the introduction of pre-action protocols which emphasise a less adversarial mediation process. As I understand it, when these kind of pre-action protocols were introduced in Australia, the cost of claims fell by 50% and the average cost of litigation fell by 20%. Minister, given the costs involved and the high likelihood that we are facing €500 million in costs in 2024, will you commit to establishing a high-level HSE and Department of Health working group to examine options such as those put forward by Professor Colleran around pre-action protocols?
Minister, please.
Well, thanks very much to Deputy Nolan. If I may at the outset just say on the record of the House, I want to call out and condemn what happened to your own constituency office, and I'm thinking of you and your staff, and obviously encourage anybody who has any information to come forward to the Gardaí in Offaly. It's an utterly despicable act, and it should be called out and condemned by all. I want to thank you very much for raising this important issue, and I think you've made a number of constructive suggestions and interventions in relation to it. I mean, the first thing we obviously need to do is make our health service as safe as it possibly can be, and obviously that requires additional capacity because obviously reducing overcrowding in EDs does indeed play a part in helping have a safe environment, but also putting structures in place where when something does go wrong, and in health things can go wrong, to make sure that all of the facts are shared with patients, that they're shared in an upfront and frank manner, and that a safe environment for the exchange of that information is provided. I know there's been a lot of work going on in health over the last number of years in terms of the establishment of the National Patient Safety Office and indeed the landmark legislation that we passed in this Oireachtas in recent years in relation to the Patient Safety Act and the provisions around open disclosure there. And certainly from my time as Minister for Health, I know in meeting with many patients, often the failure to disclose caused significant pain, very significant pain, but also caused people to feel that they were forced into the legal system, where actually often they were just wanting answers. They were wanting someone to be upfront, they were wanting someone to talk with them, and they were wanting someone to engage with them. And equally, I know from the clinician side, they would say, perhaps not equally, they would say, that actually we don't know how to interact in that, and there needs to be clear policies and clear laws. So I do think the Patient Safety Act, as it now is, was a really, really important step. But you are right, there are measures that need to be taken in relation to how we reduce the costs arising from medical negligence. Of course, we need to reduce medical negligence, but to Professor Collerin's point and others, there are steps, and that's why, from memory, in January of last year, the government appointed Dr. Rona Mahoney, very eminent individual, the former master of one of our maternity hospitals, a leading clinician in this country, to chair a group to do exactly as you suggest, to look at how do we reduce the cost of health-related legal cases, and to have a particular focus on some of the higher cost cases as examples as well. My understanding is that that work is nearing a conclusion, and of course when that happens, that report will be considered by the Minister for Health, by other relevant government colleagues, published I expect, and of course brought to Cabinet, because we do need a roadmap here. It is important that we look at how we can reduce patient safety incidences in our health service in all aspects of it, as you spoke about, but it's also important that when things do go wrong, that we have a system in place that is not an outlier in any manner or means in terms of costs, in terms of legal costs, in terms of timelines to many other neighbouring jurisdictions.
For your comments of support, which are appreciated. And in response to this issue, I do feel that certainly there needs to be more accountability, and I do acknowledge that there are measures in place around patient safety. But I think if we look at the model, it's failing, and we have a situation where patients and indeed medical professionals are caught up in a system that just isn't fit for purpose. And I really do believe that the establishment of a working group between the HSE and the Department of Health would be a good approach to take. And I would hope that such a measure could be put in place, along with the other measures that are there, of course, to try and make sure that Ireland isn't an outlier, and to make sure that we can address the issues and ensure that all times, more importantly, that there is accountability within our health system. Gareth Mockett.
Minister.
And what I can assure you is that on the group that is being chaired by Dr. Mahoney, the HSE and the Department, the State Claims Agency, and I think the Department of Finance are represented on it. And I have the terms of reference here. They're going to look at how to assess the reasons why costs of claims are continuing to rise, to develop a plan to implement risk management, to recommend measures to address patient concerns, to receive updates on the implementation of recommendations that are set out in previous reviews around the law of tort as well. So fundamentally, this group needs to look at how it can make suggestions on what measures, practical measures, can be taken to help reduce costs. I am pleased that there is a wide variety of expertise from government and outside of government on that. My understanding is that that group is due to report shortly, and I think government can reflect on your suggestion at that stage in terms of what it needs to do to implement and consider those recommendations. But we're very much looking forward to it. We're very grateful to Dr. Mahoney for agreeing to chair it, for bringing very significant healthcare experience to it, and for the many other people sitting on it, and we look forward to its output.